All right, let's jump right into today's explainer. If you're a focused learner looking to dissect one of the absolute wildest events in sports history, you're in the right place. We're traveling back to a freezing winter night, December 13th, 1983. Picture this, Denver, Colorado. Inside the McNichols Sports Arena, nearly 10,000 fans are settling in, thinking they're about to watch a standard regular season matchup between the hometown Nuggets and the visiting Detroit Pistons. But man, what actually went down over the next 3 hours was a basketball anomaly so extreme it literally broke the boundaries of offensive possibility.
370. I mean, just let that number sink in for a second. It almost looks like a typo, doesn't it? But 370 is the combined total points scored that night. The Pistons ultimately edged out the Nuggets with a mind-boggling final score of 186-184. Now, keep in mind, this wasn't an all-star game where nobody plays defense. It wasn't a scrimmage. This was a fiercely competitive, grueling marathon of a game. And it's a record that hasn't been touched, let alone broken, in over 4 decades.
So that brings us to the ultimate sports mystery. How in the world did two teams combined for 370 points in a single night? Seriously, how does an offensive explosion of that magnitude actually happen? To figure this out, we can't just look at the guys on the floor. We gotta look at the masterminds on the sidelines. Let's dig into the exact ingredients that brewed up this perfect storm.
Part 1. The Clash of Philosophies, or the Perfect Storm of 1983.
So our first ingredient is a totally radical clash of coaching philosophies. When these two squads met, it was like the very concept of defense just ceased to exist. On one side, you've got Doug Moe's Denver Nuggets. Moe ran what he called the motion offense. Honestly, it was the true predecessor to today's high-tempo, run-and-gun basketball. 0 long, drawn-out half-court sets. The Nuggets had one singular goal: sprint down the floor and put up a shot within the first 7 to 10 seconds of the shot clock. Endless running, endless shooting. Then, on the other side, you've got Chuck Daly's Detroit Pistons. Now, history remembers Daly's Pistons as the bad boys, right? The team famous for ruthless, bruising defense. But hey, this is 1983. They were not the bad boys yet. Daly was still building this team, heavily reliant on the young, incredibly raw offensive talent of a brilliant point guard named Isiah Thomas, surrounded by a roster full of eager scorers. So when Moe's relentless 7-second trek meet collided with Daly's young, offensively explosive roster, all defensive focus just vanished into thin air.
Moving on to Section 2, the missing three-pointer. A brutal physical toll. Okay, this right here is probably the most shocking twist for any modern hoops fan. When we think of a game today, even getting close to 150 points, we immediately assume it's an absolute barrage of three-pointers, right? But in this game, 4. Literally, there were only 4 total three-point shots attempted by both teams combined. Now, the three-point line had only been in the NBA for 4 seasons at this point, so teams practically ignored it. And out of those 4 attempts, only 2 actually went in, one by Isiah Thomas and one by Denver's Richard Anderson. That's it. 6 total points out of 370 came from beyond the arc. Crazy, right?
So, if they weren't checking threes, how on earth were they scoring? Well, the vast majority of these 370 points came from the absolute most physically demanding areas of the floor. We're talking points in a crowded paint, heavily contested mid-range jumpers, and just an endless loop of high-speed fast breaks. Plus, guys were driving to the basket with such reckless abandon that there were 117 free throw attempts in this game. To score nearly 400 points, basically 2 points at a time, that means these men had to sprint the full 94-foot length of the court hundreds upon hundreds of times. The physical endurance required here, it's just almost beyond human comprehension.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Denver Marathon. 3 agonizing overtimes.
Just when you think they couldn't possibly run another step, the game completely refused to end. This wasn't just a track meet anymore, it became a sheer survival test. We hit the end of the standard 48 minutes of regulation, and the score is tied at a staggering 145-145, thanks to Isiah Thomas forcing the extra period. Okay, so at 53 minutes, the end of the first overtime, they've traded buckets relentlessly, 14 points apiece, and we're tied again at 159-159. The exhaustion is really setting in now. Legs feel like lead. We push to 58 minutes, the end of double overtime. They've somehow conjured up another 12 points each. 171-171. Players can barely stand, yet the furious rhythm of scoring does not dip. Finally, we reach the 63rd minute of basketball, the third overtime. Pushed to the absolute brink, Detroit's backcourt manages to find just a fraction more endurance, securing a tiny 2-point edge to end the madness. Pistons win,
186 to 184.
To really understand the state these guys were in by that third overtime, listen to what the players later admitted. They said, "We were playing completely on autopilot, running from pure inertia." Think about that. By the 63rd minute, there were absolutely no plays being called. Zero tactical thinking. The cognitive part of the brain had pretty much just shut down, and these guys were operating entirely on deep-seated muscle memory and pure survival instinct. They were shooting automatically because their bodies literally didn't know how to do anything else.
Section 4, Surreal Statistics. Video game numbers in real life.
And yet, despite this absolute physical devastation, the individual performances didn't suffer at all. In fact, they escalated into a box score that reads way more like a glitch in NBA 2K than a real-life stat sheet. In a normal game, having one player drop 40 points is a stellar night. In this game, 4 different players broke the 40-point barrier. For Denver, Kiki Vandeweghe was an absolute machine, dropping 51 points. And he wasn't just chucking up bad shots. He was hyper-efficient, shooting an unbelievable 21 for 29 from the field. His teammate, Alex English, added 47 points and grabbed 12 boards. Over on the Detroit side, Isiah Thomas orchestrated the chaos masterfully with a massive double-double, 47 points and 17 assists. And right behind him was John Long, putting up 41 points of his own.
But it wasn't just the superstars doing the heavy lifting. The supporting cast padded this surreal box score too. Kelly Tripucka dropped 35 points for Detroit, and Dan Issel put up 28 for Denver. When that final buzzer finally mercifully rang out, these two teams had combined for a mind-boggling 142 made field goals. 142 times the ball went through the hoop from the floor. Unbelievable. Finally, Section 5, an untouchable legacy. The monument of 1983. As we wrap up today's explainer, we really have to contextualize just how rare this is. Even in recent history, like that wild 2023 double overtime thriller between the Kings and the Clippers that ended 176 to 175, or with today's blistering pace where teams are shooting 53s a game, that 1983 record of 370 total points stands completely firm. That freezing night in Denver wasn't just a basketball game. It's a monument to a completely different era of the sport. And it leaves us with this final provocative thought. With the way basketball is constantly evolving and hyper-optimizing, will we ever see another perfect storm like this? A night of purely clashing styles, raw, unchecked talent, and an absolute zero focus on defense? Or is the 370-point anomaly destined to remain an eternal, unbreakable pillar in sports history? Thanks for diving into this fascinating slice of the past with me today. Keep asking questions, keep looking at the data, and we'll see you in the next explainer.